Okay, let's see if it works. All right, back to this again. This is by far one of the most troubling and horrible chapters or sections in the Bible.
And I'll clean it up.
It shows you how absolutely evil and corrupt people can be.
So he needs some pizza?
So
This
is the last section. So Judges as a whole has been up and down, but this ends in a horrible manner. So if you recall, in the timeline of Judges, as we've talked about it, that I've shared with you that when you get to Samson, he's the last judge that's identified in the book of Judges.
I'm not leaving you.
And then you have several chapters added on at the end. They're kind of an epilogue of the book of Judges that really are tagged on the end to tell you how bad it was in the time of the judges. Milo, come here. And this, to give you an indication, we have a time reference in here. And this event happened with the first generation of the settlers of the Promised Land after the 40 years wandering. So like Samson and others came after this. This is actually the writer stepping back and saying, I've told you about the judges, now let me tell you how bad it was and why we needed the judges and why we actually really need a king. Okay? So here we go. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judea. Last week, with the story of Micah, we had a Levite from the same region who went and became a private priest to a family, leading them in their worship of idols. Now this is a Levite, the one who's set apart to be a priest. This is not the same Levite. This is a whole different. So what we're getting is this idea that the tribe of Levi had lost sight of who they were supposed to be during this time. Okay? So the writer seems to believe if a king were present in Israel, the people would not be doing the kinds of things he is about to describe. Okay? The Levite is not the same man as the previous story, but there seems to be a theme that even though the Levites are chosen by God to serve as priests to the Lord, they are not faithful to God. Okay? The Levite takes a concubine for himself. This seems to be a common in the day for a man to just take a woman to be his. Now later it's going to refer to him as her as his wife and a father-in-law and stuff like that, but he just, whether he actually ever really married her, it seems not, because she's called a concubine, which is a woman you have that you're not married to. Okay? Now, verse 2. But his concubine found him repugnant, and she left him and went to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judea and remained there for a period of 4 months. Different Bible translations word it differently. You see that the Christian Standard Bible, New International Version, English Standard Bible, and King James, she was unfaithful to him and left him for her father's house in Bethlehem in Judea. She was there for 4 months. So was she unfaithful to him, or did she find this Levite priest repugnant? So, his concubine turned away from him, and he went to her father's house in Bethlehem, Judea, and she was there for a period of 4 months. So the word can mean commit fornication or be a harlot. Okay? The Hebrew word can mean that. The word also is used when the people of God are unfaithful and worship pagan gods. So when they turn away from God and go to the false gods and play the harlot, worshiping these false gods, the same word is used. So it's an appropriate word for a woman or a man committing adultery or fornication or being unfaithful, or the people of God being unfaithful to God, to Yahweh. But, now this may not make a lot of sense to you, but neither the Vulgate, Septuagint, Targum, or Josephus understand this word to imply any act of conjugal infidelity on the woman's part. So the oldest references and writers say this woman was not sexually unfaithful. Okay? They merely state that the parties disagreed and the woman returned to her father's house. Indeed, all the circumstances of the case vindicate this view of the subject. So as we go forward and read the account, it's going to seem to be that she wasn't sexually unfaithful because the Levite goes after her to try to win her back. Okay? If she had been a whore or an adulteress, it's very likely that her husband would have gone. It's not very likely that her husband would have gone after her to speak friendly, literally, to speak to her heart and entreat her to return. Now here, the word can also be translated as reject or spurn, which seems to be more in line with the circumstances of our text. His concubine found him repugnant. She couldn't handle how bad of a man he was. Everything in my gut tells me he was abusive to her. Okay? And you'll see that as the story goes on. Okay? There seems to be the idea in the text that Levite was such a bad man that his concubine turned from him and deserted him. Okay? She went home to her father's house, which would not have been acceptable if she was an immoral woman. There would have been every likelihood that she would have been stoned to death for her sin. And she wasn't stoned to death. Okay? So you got it? It can mean sexually unfaithful, but the word in the right context can mean that you just are, this guy's just disgusting.
And he's supposed to be a man of God.
Yeah. Instead, the Levite goes to her father's house in an attempt to win her back. So, here's verse 3. Then her husband, noted she's a concubine, but here the writer is calling her his husband. Or, this Levite, her husband. Then her husband set out and went after her to speak gently to her in order to bring her back, taking with him his servant and a pair of donkeys. And she brought him to her father's house, and when the girl's father saw him, he was glad to meet him. So, it was not an arranged marriage. This was not where the fathers got together and did the dowry and all that kind of stuff. This was a Levite who took this woman and kind of said, "You're my wife," and this is the first time Daddy's met him. Now, you can imagine a girl going home to Daddy's house because the man she's with is so horrible. And that's my son calling, and I'll mute that. And so, when the Levite goes, Daddy doesn't want her to leave with him. And we'll see that too. It seems interesting the Levite waits 4 months before going after her. Why? You didn't go immediately. It's also interesting the writer says he went to speak kindly to her to bring her back. He is trying to win her back. If she'd been an immoral woman and gone off with another guy, he would not have been going speaking kindly to her to try to win her back. Okay, that's why I think he's the bad guy. He's the one that's repugnant. She couldn't handle it and she ran off back to Daddy. Does this mean he had been harsh to her in the past? This would be evident in his treatment of her as the text proceeds. Okay? I'm just telling you, you're about to hear one of the worst stories in the Old Testament. His father-in-law, the girl's father, prevailed upon him and he remained with him for 3 days. So they ate and drank and he stayed there. Now on the 4th day, they got up early in the morning and he prepared to go. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen yourself with a piece of bread and afterward you may go." So both of them sat down and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the men, "Please be so kind as to spend the night and let your heart be cheerful." So after 3 days, the Levite wants to leave and Daddy says, "No, stay another day." However, the man got up to go, but his father-in-law urged him, and he spent the night there again. Now, on the 5th day, he got up to go early in the morning, but the father said, "Please strengthen yourself and wait until late afternoon." So both of them ate. And then when the man got to go, along with his concubine and servant, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, "Behold, now the day has drawn to a close. Please spend the night. Behold, the day is coming to an end. Spend the night here, so that your heart may be cheerful. Then tomorrow you may arise early and for your journey and go home." What's the daddy doing? Trying to keep him there. "I don't want my daughter to go with you." The Levite was to depart after 3 days, after a 3-day stay, but is persuaded to stay each day for a total of 5 days. Each day the man went to leave, wants to leave, but he's convinced to stay another day. What's father-in-law doing? He's feeding him and getting him drunk. Okay. He's finally had enough and takes his concubine and leaves. But the man was unwilling to spend the night, so he got up and left and came to a place opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. Remember, Jerusalem doesn't become the capital of Israel until David's time. It is in the hands of the Jebusites all the way through King Saul. And it's David who conquers Jerusalem and makes it the capital of Israel. Okay? So, and with him was a pair of saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. When they were near Jebus, the day was almost gone, and the servant said to his master, "Please come, and let's turn aside into the city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." How far is Bethlehem, which is where they were at, to Jerusalem? Is it 7 miles? 5 miles? Not very far. So it's late in the day, they've journeyed. First big city they come to where they can get a place to stay happens to belong to the Jebusites. The Levite and his concubine and servant have traveled near Jerusalem. The servant wants to stay there. The Levite refuses because Jerusalem is not inhabited by Israelites but foreigners. So the city of Jerusalem doesn't become a Jewish capital of David, so they keep going. However, his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a city of foreigners who are not of the sons of Israel. Instead, we will go as far as Gibeah." And he said to his servant, "Come, and let's approach one of these places. We'll spend the night in Gibeah or Ramah." So they passed along and went their way, and the sun set on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. So they have turned away from foreigners, and they're going to other Israelites to spend the night. Okay? Sounds all right, right? When they turned aside there to enter and spend the night in Gibeah, and when they entered, they sat down in the public square of the city, where no one took them into his house to spend the night. It was common that if travelers came in, especially a Levite, he would have been dressed appropriately. They would have known he was a Levite. That's why the father-in-law was glad to meet him. He's a Levite. I mean, this is prestigious. This is my daughter, marrying someone of prominence to be a Levite. Chosen people of God, chosen tribe kind of thing. No one took him in. When normally you extend hospitality to strangers. It was customary to enter a village and meet people in town square. People would extend hospitality to strangers. Hospitality was a very serious matter in the period of the Old Testament. Hospitality meant taking one in and treat them as family. This would include an absolute covenant of protection. Okay? That's important. Because when you take a family in, you extend hospitality, you basically are saying to them, "You're family, and if I have to die for you like with one of my children, I will." Okay? And that's still that way today in the Middle Eastern world. Now, granted, it's mostly Muslim, but if they take you in and sit at a table and eat with you, they will die for you. Because this hospitality is a very real thing. It's not just we're going to be friendly, we are committing ourselves to you. Okay?
The Israelites weren't that way?
Huh?
The Israelites weren't that way? I thought they were.
Yeah, they normally were. So that's what's strange, that he goes into the town square and no one kind of takes him in.
Oh, okay.
And knowing he's a Levite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't take them.
Why didn't,
You're going to find out that Gibeah, though it is the tribe of Benjamin, is not a very good place. Then behold, an old man was coming out of the field from his work at evening. Now the man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was staying in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. He raised his eyes and saw the traveler in the public square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" He said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judea to a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, for I am from there. And I went to Bethlehem in Judea. But I am now going to my house, and no one will take me into his house. Yet there is both straw and feed for our donkeys, and also bread and wine for me, and for your female slave, and the young man who is with you. there is no lack of anything. So it's actually the old man talking, and he thinks it's a female slave. Not his concubine, not his wife.
And he didn't correct him.
No. Oh, it gets worse. The old man said, please, peace to you. Only let me take care of all your needs. However, do not spend the night in the public square. So he took him to his house and fed his donkeys, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. So the old man takes the Levite to his home and cares for all his need. Is there a parallel story in the Bible that sounds kind of like that?
Lot.
Travelers that come to Sodom. And Lot sees them and say, don't spend the night in the square. Come to my house and I'll take care of all your needs. Okay, you know what happened to Sodom. Okay, we're going to reference that in a minute. As they were making their hearts merry, drinking a whole lot, behold, the men of the city, worthless fellows, surrounded the house, beating on the door. And they said to the old man, the master of the house, bring out the man who came into your house that we may know him. They want to rape the man. To know him is to know him intimately. So their desire is to rape the man, homosexual rape, the man. Just like Sodom, when the men of the city wanted the two travelers to rape them, what did Lot offer them?
His daughter.
His daughters. Okay? So the worthless men of the city surrounded the house wanting to take the Levite and rape him. And the man, the master of the house, went out and said to them, no, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not do this vile thing. I've offered him hospitality. I've offered him protection. Don't do this. Yeah. Okay. Behold, here are my virgin daughters and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Violate them and do with them what seems good to you. But against this man, do not do this outrageous thing. Just like Lot, take my virgin daughters. Rape them if you want to. Because women had no value. Women didn't count. Just don't do this to the man. Same in Sodom, same here. Okay? Offers him 3 women. The man offers his daughters and the concubine in the place of the Levite. The rape of women was acceptable, but the rape of the Levite was unacceptable. How do you feel about that, ladies? Okay?
Somebody'd have been dead.
So the account of Lot and the angels of Sodom in Genesis 19. So we're going to go to Genesis 19 real quick so you see the absolute parallel. Now the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Lot saw them and stood to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground and said, now behold, my lords, please turn aside into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet that you may rise early and go on your way. They said, no, we will spend the night in the public square. And he strongly urged them. So they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Now, why does Lot not want them to stay in the public square? Because he knows what kind of city he's living in. Now, if you remember the account, as an aside real quick, Lot is a nephew of Abraham. Their herds and shepherds had gotten so numerous that the shepherds are fighting with each other over the best grazing land. So Abraham says, Lot, you pick where you want to go. You go north, I'll go south. You go east, I'll go west. You pick where you want to go. I give you the choice. Now Abraham could have said, I'm uncle, I'm going to choose. But he said, Lot, you have the choice. He saw the lush green lands that led down to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, the best grazing. He said, this is where I want to go. So Abraham took his flocks and shepherds and went the other way. Evidently, by the time the 3 travelers come to Abraham, Lot has sold out. We have no reference to shepherds, no reference to flocks. Lot is living in the city, not out on the grazing lands with his shepherds and his sheep. So evidently Lot has liquidated everything. He has become a fairly prominent citizen of the city of Sodom because he has money, because he's sitting at the gate. Milo, come here. And the city gate is where people came, come here, for judgment from the elders of the city. Sit. Right now, come on, sit. So I'm thinking Lot has gained a fairly prestigious position. Okay? Lot, no. Call him Lot. Lay down.
Yeah.
Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter, and they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may have relations with them." But Lot went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, "Please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. Now look, I have 2 daughters who have not had relations with any man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do with them whatever you like. Only do not do anything to these men, because they have come under the shelter of my roof." He said he has offered hospitality, and he is committed to sacrificing anything and everything that he has to protect them. That's hospitality in the Old Testament. But they said, "Get out of the way." They also said, "This one came in as a foreigner and already he is acting like a judge. Now we will treat you worse than them." So they pressed hard against Lot and moved forward to break the door. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, from the small to the great. So they became weary of trying to find the doorway. Now the angels say, "Take your daughters, your wife, get out." His wife, what happens? She turns and looks back at the destruction, becomes a pillar of salt. Where was she from? Sodom. This is home. So he got married. Now Lot has nothing but a pocket full of money and his 2 daughters. What do? You remember the story? After all this story in a minute is over, they get their daddy drunk, and one of them sleeps with daddy, gets pregnant by him. The next night, the other one sleeps with him, gets him drunk and sleeps with him. They get pregnant, and they become 2 of the lines of the descents of the Arab people. Lot's children from incestuous relationships with his 2 daughters who got him drunk. So there's very little, there's no moral compass for his daughters either. Okay? But the men would not listen, because back to our story. The men would not listen to him, so the man seized his concubine and made her go out to them. So the men were back to Gibeah, the men of Benjamin, the Levite and his concubine. But the men would not listen to him. The old man offered his 2 virgin daughters and the concubine that belonged to Levi. Wouldn't listen to him. So the man, the Levite, seized his concubine, so it's a Levite, and made her go out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And as the day began to break, they let her go. As the morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was light. How many men to the city came? We have no idea. It wasn't just 2 or 3.
Sorry, question. I thought the Muslims came from Abraham's son from
Ishmael.
Ishmael,
Mm-hmm.
and that's...
Not all the Arabs. There's still Lot's line.
Oh, okay.
There's the Moabites and somebody else come from Lot's line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Women's daughters.
that makes sense.
So the Levite pushes his concubine out to the crowd of men. They abuse her till morning. She fell at the old man's door dead. We find out in the next chapter, in verse 5, that they basically raped her to death. Which probably envisioned not just vaginal rape, but every other kind of rape, and probably hitting and abusing and whipping and all kinds of stuff. Those horrid things you can think of. Because it was physical enough, it killed her. And her master rose up in the morning, and when he opened the door of the house and went out to go on his way, he was just going to leave her. He just gets up to go.
Scumbag.
Behold, there was a concubine lying at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. She literally is
Dead.
laying there trying to get into the house. He said to her, "Get up and let us be going." But there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey, and the man rose up and went away to his home. Now, do you understand why she found him repugnant and ran away from him? And why Daddy didn't want her to leave and go with him again? The Levite rose up to go his way. Instead, it seems he gave no thought to his concubine. She was lying in the door, dead, but the Levite thought she was alive. Once he knew she was dead, he loaded her on the donkey and took her home. You know.
To
And when he,
To her home?
went to his home.
With the dad? Oh, his
No,
home.
to his home.
Okay.
The Levite's home, because he was headed home.
Okay.
And when he entered his house, he took a knife,
Oh,
and
God.
taking hold of his concubine, divided her limb by limb into 12 pieces, and sent her through all the territory of Israel. And all who saw it said, such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day that the people of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak. So he cuts her body in pieces and sends her through all the land of Israel to all the tribes.
Why?
Oh, it gets worse.
Hold on.
It gets worse. So he divides his concubine in 12 pieces and sends the pieces to the land. This is a cry for vengeance.
Okay, when I was reading this yesterday, and here we have a Levite from the tribe, and he cuts the concubine into 12 pieces. Was that one piece for each tribe?
Just to send her to each of the 12 tribes. Send a piece of her to each tribe.
Okay.
What were they gonna do with it?
Well, this was a rally cry. This is how bad it is. Come to me and let's deal with this. The Levite is seeking vengeance. He wants all the tribes of Israel to rise up with him against the men of Gibeah who did this. So in that sense, you can say he wants to go get justice, but he has no respect for the woman. Okay? That's the end of chapter 19. Are you loving this?
It's a coming.
When this is about, as like I said, this story is as bad as it gets. And this story is tagged at the very end of Judges, that the actual events predate the events of the judges themselves. This is an appendix, if you will, or the writer of the book of Judges saying this is how bad it was, and this is why we needed judges and why we need a king. Because chronologically, this could have been chapters like 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the guy whoever wrote Judges decided to give us the account of the judges and put all these horrible things at the end. Because we had Micah last week, who was a Levite, who was leading worship of idols. That was also one of the predating things. Okay, and we're going to get that reference in a minute. And all the sons of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba. Remember what I told you, that you measured the promised land from Dan in the north, which we heard last week, the Danites ransacked that poor city. They had no defenses, and took all their women and set up, renamed the city Dan, and it was because Dan was trying to expand themselves. And that's remember the Danites were on the prowl to find a place to expand, and they came to the house where Micah was, and his Levite, his family priest. They took the priest, they took the idols from the man, and took them to the city and renamed the city Dan after they killed everybody. And that becomes the farthest northern portion of the land of Israel. Remember what I told you, the Danites in the city of Dan worshipped idols all the way to the time of the Babylonian captivity with Nebuchadnezzar. That's what the writer tells us. That they worshipped the idols that were set up there all the way to the Babylonian captivity. And that's in 586 when the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. So all through Saul and David and Solomon and all the kings and everything, they still worshipped idols in Dan.
Well, I just find it interesting, or sad, that these men are Levites that are doing all of this.
Yep. It's horrible. I'm telling you. He's showing us how bad it has gotten. Okay? And all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba. Dan the farther north, Beersheba the most southern part of the measurement of the Holy Land, and it's 128 miles from Dan to Beersheba, from here to Abilene, basically. It's not a big area of land. Promised Land is 128 miles long at its longest point by 65 miles wide at its widest point. Okay? So, including the land of Gilead, came out, and the congregation assembled as one person to the Lord at Mizpah. We've heard Mizpah before. A place of promise. Remember the Mizpah coin is broken in half and two people wear the two halves, pledging their friendship. and their loyalty to each other, they meet at that place. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, took their stand in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the sons of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this wickedness take place?" Tell us what happened. Who are they talking to? The Levite. So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came with my concubine to spend the night at Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, but the citizens of Gibeah rose up against me, and they surrounded the house, threatening me. They intended to kill me. Instead, they raped my concubine so that she died." Now, he doesn't say that the men wanted to rape him, although they did.
That was the original.
But maybe his intent is they raped her to the point that she died. Maybe they were going to rape me to the point that I died. Maybe that's what he's intending. Okay, give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. "So I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout the land of Israel's inheritance. For they have committed an outrageous sin and a vile act in Israel. Behold, all you sons of Israel, give me your response and advice here. What do you think I ought to do about this?" And all the people rose up as one man, saying, "None of us will go to his tent, and none of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. And we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000, to bring provisions for the people, that when they come, they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage they have committed in Israel." In other words, we're going to go and destroy Gibeah, the men who did this. They have 400,000 men there. They're going to separate them out, how many we're going to send to battle. The rest are going to provide all the provisions for those that are fighting. Okay? So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. So, rightly so, the other tribes are outraged by what has happened. And they agree to go to war against Benjamin, particularly against Gibeah. Okay? Then the tribes of Israel sent men through the entire tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What is this wickedness that has taken place among you? Now then, turn over the men, the worthless men who are in Gibeah, so that we may put them to death and remove this wickedness from Israel." But the sons of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the sons of Israel. Instead, the sons of Benjamin gathered from the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the sons of Israel. So the whole tribe of Benjamin says, "We're not going to give up this handful of guys. We're going to fight to defend them." What does that tell you? We're going to protect the murderers. We're going to protect the rapists. We're going to, make them feel safe and secure. Sound familiar in our culture? In the cities on that day, the sons of Benjamin were counted 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were counted 700 choice men. Out of all these people, 700 choice men were left-handed. Each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. So they're very talented warriors. Don't ask me why benches are all left-handed, I don't know.
Okay, that answered that. I was getting ready to ask.
Then the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were counted. 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war. 400,000 against, what did it say?
A city of, let's see, just say.
700. So you got 26,000 plus the 700 against 400,000. But remember, not all 400,000 are going to fight. They're only selecting by lot a few of them. The Benjamites have the opportunity to turn over the men of Gibeah who did this great evil, but they would not. What does it say when a people take a stand and support those who are evil?
Look around.
Those who call evil good and those who call good evil. We see it in our society all around us today. As I said, those who are defending. Can you imagine 15 years ago, some foreigners beating down a couple of cops and being turned loose, like we see in the news? Or can you imagine, any of the things, that have happened? Do you imagine like up north, what city is it, Chicago or where? Where unless you are first-degree murder, they don't even put you in jail? if you are drunk and run over somebody and kill them, vehicular manslaughter with a DWI. If it's second-degree murder, if it's, rape, if it's anything like that, burglary with a gun, the police arrest you, take you down to the courthouse, give you a date of a hearing, and turn you loose. They do not put you in jail. There is no bail. There is no bond. There is nothing unless it's first-degree murder. If that's going to be the charge, they put you in jail until you bond out. Can you imagine somebody walking in with a gun and robbing Walmart, and the Odessa police saying, "Okay, we'll let you go, and you just promise to show up at your
Give me your wrist, I'll let me slap it.
Huh?
Give me your wrist and let me slap it.
Mm-hmm. What would you do if it was someone close to you? I'm sorry, but if somebody did something like that to Megan, hurt Megan, and there was no justice coming from, I'd go after them. I'm sorry, I don't have a problem with that.
What was it you said, Jason, about when they found the little girl in the lake?
This week?
Put a bullet in his head and saved us taxpayers a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, son, he said, think about it, Mom.
The people of Israel rose up and went to Bethel and inquired of God. We'll get our timestamp here in a second. They went to Bethel. Who shall go up first for us, to fight against the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. The tribes of Israel inquired of the Lord concerning the battle. They are truly seeking to do God's will. They're going to prayer. They're asking God for His guidance. Sons of Israel got up in the morning and camped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Israel lined up for battle against Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and struck to the ground on that day 22,000 men of Israel. The men of Israel, showed themselves courageous and lined up for battle again in the place where they had lined themselves up on the first day. So basically, the first encounter, Gibeah wins. Sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening and inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall we again advance for battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, Go up against him. So the first two encounters, Israel is defeated. So the sons of Israel came against the sons of Benjamin on the second day. And Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah and the second day and struck to the ground 18,000 men of the sons of Israel, all those who drew the sword. And all the sons of Israel and all the people went up and came to Bethel. And they wept and remained there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the sons of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I'm confused.
Okay.
Who's winning?
Gibeah, the Benjaminites, the evil guys. They've come out of the city and fought against the other tribes, the men that they sent, and defeated them for 2 days. So the first day, they struck down how many? Struck to the ground 22,000 men. This time they came out and struck down 18,000. This is swords and clubs. This is bloody. This is 22,000, 18,000, 40,000 men, 40,000 bodies lying on the ground outside the walls of Gibeah. 40,000 bodies sitting in the desert sun. Imagine that after 2-3 days. Okay? But the Ark of the Covenant was at Bethel. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, Aaron's son, stood before it to minister in those days. So you got Aaron, Eleazar, and Phinehas. Aaron, 40 years in the wilderness with Moses. Ebenezer, his son, is there that comes across into the promised land. And this is Phinehas, his son, okay, saying, Shall I yet go out to battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin, or shall I stop? The Lord said, Go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. So, after 2 battles and 2 defeats, the people inquire of the Lord again, and the Lord assures them of the coming victory. So the time indicator is given. Phinehas is the priest at Bethel. Eleazar is the priest when they enter the land under Josiah's leadership. This is the first generation after the conquest, or even during the conquest. I mean, this is early on. The judges happened decades later. So this event that he's telling us about happened prior to the rising of the judges. Again, like I said, he's telling us how bad it was and why the judgment of God was coming upon the tribes. Because he would raise up an oppressor, and when the people cried out in forgiveness, he'd raise up a judge to deliver them. He's showing us how bad it was and why God was sending judgment upon these tribes. Okay?
So God was on the side of the men that did this in the first place?
No.
No, the
He's-
other ones.
He's on the side of Israel, but they're setting a trap.
Okay,
Watch.
okay.
Okay? So Israel set men in ambush around Gibeah. And the sons of Israel went up again to the sons of, against the sons of Benjamin on the third day and lined up against Gibeah as the other times. When the sons of Benjamin went out against the people, they were lured away from the city. And they began to strike and kill some of the people, as at other times on the roads, one of which goes up to Bethel, and the other to Gibeah. And in the field, about 30 men of Israel. So basically, the men of Israel approach, the men of Gibeah come out, they kind of run off, the men of Gibeah chase them, and they're getting them further and further away from the city of Gibeah itself, the Benjamin soldiers. And the sons of Benjamin said, they are defeated before us, like the first time. The sons of Israel said, let's flee so that we may draw them away from the city to the roads. So the men of Israel planned to draw the men of Gibeah out of the city and take the city. And all the men of Israel rose from their place and lined up at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel, in ambush, charged from their place from Murrah, Geba, can't say these. When 10,000 choice men from all Israel came against Gibeah, the battle became fierce. But Benjamin did not know that disaster was close to them. The soldiers are out chasing the Israelites when another group of Israelites, other tribes, attacked the city. Okay? And the Lord struck Benjamin before Israel, so that the sons of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day, all who drew the sword. So the sons of Benjamin saw they were defeated when the men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they relied on the men in ambush who were set against them. So the battle's over, Benjamin's done. The men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah, and the men in ambush also deployed and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the agreed sign between the men of Israel and the men in ambush was that they would make a great cloud of smoke rise from the city. When the men of Israel turned in the battle, and Benjamin began to strike and kill about 30 of the men of Israel, for they said, undoubtedly they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the cloud began to rise from the city in a column of smoke, Benjamin looked behind them, and behold, the entire city was going up in smoke to heaven. The men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were terrified, for they saw that disaster was close to them. So they're chasing them, cities destroyed, they look back and see that the city's destroyed, and Israel has been running, the soldiers, turn and attack. So now they're getting it from both sides, basically. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel to flee in the direction of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them while those who attacked from the cities were annihilating them in the midst of them. And they surrounded Benjamin, pursued them without rest, and trampled down opposite Gibeah toward the east. So 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all those who were valiant. The rest turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. But they caught 5,000 of them on the roads and overtook them at Gittim and killed 2,000 of them. So all those of Benjamin who fell that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword. All these were valiant men. But 600 men turned and fled to the wilderness, to the rock of Rimmon, and there they remained at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. The men of Israel then turned back against the sons of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, both the entire city with the cattle and all they found, and they set on fire all the cities which they found. So what do the men of Israel do? They go through the land of Benjamin, not just Gibeah, all the cities of Benjamin, and kill everything and burn all the cities. Okay? Benjamin has 600 men in hiding. They destroyed every city of the tribe of Benjamin and all that was living, both man and beast. It means every woman, every child, every old man, every cripple, every baby, every animal. They annihilated everything of Benjamin except the 600 men who were in hiding. Now, I told you, you had the concubine, and that's bad enough what happened to her. Now you have the rest of Israel committing genocide and destroying an entire tribe. The entire tribe of Benjamin is wiped out. By the way, from what tribe was the Apostle Paul? Benjamin. It was the smallest of the tribes because they didn't have much left. Okay? That takes us to chapter 21. It's the last chapter. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, none of us shall give his daughters to Benjamin in marriage.
Well,
When they
how
fir-
are they?
When they first came together, they said, we're done with Benjamin. Okay? We made that oath. There's 600 men left. Okay? All their wives, all their children, all their animals, livestock, everything's been killed. Their cities have been burned and destroyed. They have nothing left. They're hiding up in the mountains. Okay? So the people came to Bethel and sat there before God until evening and raised their voices and wept profusely. And they said, why, Lord God of Israel, has this happened in Israel, that one tribe is missing today from Israel? And it came about the next day that people got up early and built an altar there and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the sons of Israel said, who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not go up to the Lord in the assembly? For they had taken a solemn oath concerning anyone who did not go up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, he shall certainly be put to death. In other words, we're all going to get in this, all or nothing. All the rest of Israel's in this, and if you refuse to fight, we're going to kill you. Okay, for not coming and standing with us against Benjamin. Okay? And the sons of Israel were sorry for their brother Benjamin and said, today one tribe is cut off from Israel. What are we to do for wives for those who are left, since we have sworn by the Lord not to give them any of our daughters as wives? Where are the 600 men going to get women to marry? And if they don't marry, they'll have no children. Tribe of Benjamin dies out, and there's no tribe of Benjamin.
You know, I kind of think of that, I think like that with what they're doing today. After they destroy men and women and children, who are they going to rule and how are they going to build
True.
up their country again?
True. I agree. So in the heat of anger, the men of Israel swore never to give their daughters in marriage to the men of Benjamin. All the women and children of Benjamin are dead, and only 600 men have survived. With no wives, the tribe of Benjamin will die. And they said, what one is there of the tribes of Israel that did not go up to the Lord at Mizpah? And behold, no one had come from the camp of Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were counted, behold, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. And the congregation sent 12,000 of the valiant warriors there, and commanded them, saying, go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, along with the women and the children. What did they say? If you don't come up and fight with us against Benjamin, we're going to kill you. So now they realize that one tribe, one section, one clan of a tribe didn't come and fight. So they say, all the Israelite soldiers, go kill them. That's what we said we'd do. So go kill them. And this is the thing that you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male and every woman who has slept with a male. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man but sleeping with him. And they brought them to the camp of Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. What are they doing? They're getting wives of the tribe of Benjamin. It doesn't matter, we killed your families and kidnapped you. You're going to be with these men. You don't have a choice. You getting a theme here, ladies?
Uh-huh.
So Jabesh Gilead were part of the tribe of Manasseh. So when the Israelites, so now we have Israelites killing Israelites to provide wives to the remnant of the tribe of Benjamin. Bad enough they killed off, exterminated, genocide the tribe of Benjamin. Now you've got Israelites killing other Israelites just to get them wives. Okay? Israel is seeking to get wives for Benjamin. Only 400 are found. How many men are in hiding?
600.
600. Then the whole congregation sent word and spoke to the sons of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon and proclaimed peace to them. And the tribe of Benjamin returned at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had allowed to live from the women of Jabesh Gilead. But there were not enough for them. And the people were sorry for Benjamin because the Lord had created a gap in the tribes of Israel. We're so sorry, you're scumbags. We're so sorry we killed your women, children, cattle, burned your houses. We feel sorry for you, so look what we did for you. We found you women. Take these virgins and go start a new life. But there's not enough. And then the Benjamin returned to the land with 400 wives. The other tribes had captured for them. There are 200 men in Benjamin who have no wives. Then the elders of the congregation said, "What are we to do for wives for those who are left, since women have been eliminated from Benjamin?" And I said, "There must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, so that the tribe will not be wiped out from Israel. But we cannot give them wives from our daughters." The sons of Israel had sworn, saying, "Cursed is he who gives a wife to Benjamin." So they said, "Behold, there is a feast of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, which is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the road that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south side of Lebanon," or however you say that. "And they commanded the sons of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and watch. And behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to take part in the dances, you shall come out of the vineyards, and each of you shall seize his wife from the daughters of Shiloh and go to the land of Benjamin." In other words, go kidnap from another tribe. Okay? Another example of the forceful taking of women to be wives. All this started with Levi, who did the same thing, basically. And when their fathers or their brothers come and complain to us, we should say to them, "Give them to us voluntarily, because we did not take for each man of Benjamin a wife in battle, nor did you give them to them, otherwise you would not be guilty." So in other words, we didn't come kill you and take the girls, and you didn't freely give them, so you're not breaking your oath. Because we let the men of Benjamin kidnap them, so let it go. See how they're getting around their own oath? Okay? The sons of Benjamin did so and took wives according to the number from those who danced, whom they seized. And they went and returned to their inheritance and rebuilt the cities and lived in them. So now the 600 men have 600 wives. Taken by extermination, taken by kidnapping. Do you see how evil the people of Israel have become? So they take wives themselves from the virgins who were captured at the festival. And then Shiloh did not give their daughters into marriage. So they had not violated the oath they took. And the sons of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family, and each one departed there to his inheritance. Verse 25. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That's the end of the book of Judges. The text ends with a phrase that we've heard often: in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That's it. That's how the book of Judges ends. It ends with this horrid story, starting with the concubine who's abused and raped to death, who's cut up in pieces, with the genocide of the tribe of Benjamin, with the annihilation of the other group of people who didn't come up and fight, and stealing their virgin daughters for wives, and then the kidnapping of 200 more women from Shiloh. Can a society and a people get any worse?
Maybe, but it would take something.
It would take some effort to be worse than this. And what does he keep coming back to? There was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. With the king will come the enforcement of the law and the laws of the people. Without the king, there is no leadership. So it doesn't take long after the book of Judges till they cry out for a king. Okay? Yeah, Mark?
There's 4 times that verse repeats itself.
Mhm. Yeah.
And each time it comes at a pivotal point. And it's almost like they're crying out for a king.
Right. And God had told the people of Israel when Moses was still alive, there's going to come a point that you are going to want a king. And when you have a king, make sure that he what? Does not have many wives, because it will lead him astray. We already covered that. Back when they're wandering in the wilderness, God says the day's going to come when you have a king. And we see that David had 8 wives and 10 concubines. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And it just goes on from that. How the women and the influence, and they led Solomon, the wisest man in the world, to worship idols. Okay? So, I mean, they violated, but God had told them back in the days of the 40 years of wilderness wandering, you're going to have kings. Make sure they're faithful to me. And they didn't do it.
And they weren't.
They weren't.
I just got a question for Solomon.
Mm.
I was married once, and I'm divorced. How the heck do you do 700?
Exactly.
Or 1,000.
No, I was just sitting here thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
How can you keep up with
That is
one,
amazing.
let alone 2 or 700?
700, man.
So, all right, so here's the deal.
There's only 365 days.
You're catching on.
You lost it.
All right. So the book of Judges ends on a very negative note, which helps us understand even Samson's life. Samson was a vile, vulgar, from prostitutes to, all the stuff he did. There was no morality. People just were running amok, and you've seen that in all these stories of the Judges. That's why we get in very quickly into Samuel, the priest, and the kings begin to come and everything, and there's a little more order, but it's a different struggles then. Now let me talk a little bit about what's going on. This is the end of Judges. For the next few weeks, we're going to do a multi-part series study on the Holy Spirit. Okay? I'm reworking something I've done years ago, and I realized that I'd be done tonight and needed something else for next week. And I also realized that in Sunday morning I'm in Romans chapter 14, there's only 16 chapters, so I started working on Galatians for Sunday morning. So it's a topical study, and this has been through the book, but not a verse by verse because there's so much history. So we will do kind of a topical in here, verse by verse on Sunday mornings, which is my plan to keep them different. And hopefully this Holy Spirit study will take us to Easter, and hopefully by then the new videos of The Chosen will be out. If not, we'll do something else to fill in the gap till The Chosen comes out. Okay?
Like Daniel?
Daniel is not a short book to do. I've done Daniel, and
He knows.
it takes a while.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts?
You're troubling Israel.
It is trying to be funny.
Yeah. Well, let's pray. Father, thank you for giving us understanding this evening of how evil people can be when they're not holding on to you in faith. We see it in the world around us, and you've shown us in Scripture that it's always been there. May we be the ones who hold on to you in faith and give guidance to others the right way. Please bless us as we seek to live for you and reveal you in the world. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.
Next week, we will be having chicken pot.